Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And today, the question we've got, it's so funny. At the beginning of the pandemic, I sort of thought this set of topics around how we work when we are apart from each other would be like relevant, but in a immediate short-term sense and maybe some distant future. But man, like we are just living with this. And so for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work, and we take one of your questions each time about work and bring in a friend to talk about it. And Josh Levine, actually Levine or Levine, I don't even know.
Levine.
All right, good. Is the owner of Great Mondays and the author of Great Mondays, the book, which helps organizations figure out how they design their culture. He also teaches in the DMBA, the Design MBA program at California College of the Arts, which my wife used to run that program. So I am a strong believer in it as a result, but even independently. And so, Josh, the question is, if we're working apart from each other, the way that I am with my team today, how do we create better relationships between people? And I'll just say, as I ask this, the things that are coming to mind are all the failed attempts to do it. It's like no more fucking Zoom activities. I think we've all reached that point. Yeah. And so thank you for giving any and all perspective on it.
Yeah. Well, this is, to me, the reason why I thought this was so interesting to talk about is because this is going to be, I think the typical employee is already feeling this, but leaders and managers don't quite know exactly what's going on and why the collaboration or the work isn't quite happening the way it used to. And I feel like in the next 5 years, it's really going to come to a moment where relationships, it's going to become really evident that these relationships are the critical, juncture of how we do work. And so we've got to refigure out in a very new way how to bring people together. There's the one study that I keep pointing back to that Microsoft did last year, which is we're closer with our immediate teams, but further from our distributed teams. And so it is now the responsibility of the employees, of the people, but also the companies to actually build those. So that's the question. How do you do it?
Sorry, just to make sure I'm following on the language. Yeah. When you say the distributed team in that case, what you mean is it's not the handful of people I work with all day long every day. It's the organization as a whole, the people I collaborate with. I remember we once did this exercise at my old company where we stood on the ground and there was the org chart laid out on the ground, and we took balls of yarn and threw them at people who we worked with on a regular basis. And so it's like the distant throws of the balls of yarn, not the close throws. That's what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Definitely. That's exactly right. And those are as important, not for the immediate work, but you gotta meet those people both because you may need to work with them in the future. You may need to ask them for a favor in the future, or you leave the job and that's the person that's going to help you get connected further.
Well, that, and also I think the day-to-day enjoyment of work, it's like if they're just strings of characters typing something into Slack, it's a lot less meaningful than if you feel like you know them as humans.
So let's define that quickly. What I think is that the difference between slacking with somebody and how to actually get to know somebody. And I think it's all of the stuff that makes us the humans, the kids and partners, the hobbies, the struggles and the wins, all the things that happen outside of that. And so my answer to you for how to do it is one word: cats. I think
Do they have any teacup kitties or any cats?
Any cats whatsoever. So I think an easy way to start building relationships is those dumb but very effective channels in Slack that bring people together around subjects that they care about that have nothing to do with work.
Yeah.
And the cats, dogs, and babies is great because then you're emotionally open, right? Like you just can't help it. You see that cute cat or whatever it is, and you're just like, oh my God, it's so cute. And you're like connected with somebody else. So it's, of course, that's not the answer, but that is
well, so let me ask you a question about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no, that's it. That's it. Go ahead.
Okay, no, I think it's a brilliantly simple answer. Maybe I mean, one syllable answers are amazing. And we've got, we invest in a company called Donut that calls this water cooler topics, and they actually will create a channel that just prompts you with things like, I'm just looking now, what was the best thing you've eaten recently? And you're describing something slightly different, which is something that's meaningful to you and not just something frivolous, but it might be both. So one of the challenges I think a lot of organizations run into on this, and here we are, two white guys talking to each other about it, is across teams with diverse backgrounds, how do you create conversations that include people? And I'm curious how you think about that as the leader of a team. If you don't know, like cats don't work on me, for example. Like, I hear cats, I'm like, that's for incels on Reddit. I gotta go. And so that's not about my personal background so much as it is just whatever random bizarre tastes I have. And I'm just curious, how do you do that in a diverse team?
Look, I think your point is well taken, which is, if you come from a similar background, you're going to have more overlaps of interest.
And it's also easier to guess what other people might be into. I know other people always want to talk about sports. I don't want to talk about sports, but they want to.
Exactly. Like, I'm not going to join the basketball Slack channel or whatever, or Kibitz group. What I think you both want to foster groups that have common experiences, as well as foster the groups that have different kinds of experiences. And so, sure, you can start your meetings with a bring your favorite concert tee, wear your favorite concert tee. And that way you can have a common thing across the team, or what's your favorite hat, or whatever that is. And you get to know the people a little bit at a time. When I think the magic of #cats, or whatever it is that it's not just an answer, but it is something that you care about. And I think if there's enough of these things, you're going to find little specific niches and threads that are going to cut through all the, maybe not all, but a lot of the diversity and inclusion, the diverse, underrepresented, categories of people, all those elements. And how do you know? You don't know. I'll give you an example of, we come in, and Great Mondays comes in where we help organizations design and build their cultures, but we don't have the answers. We could never know. So my one example that I heard, and I'm not saying that this group was going to be particularly diverse, but it proves a point about who the hell knows, which is that there was a group of guys who played Dungeons and Dragons at this company. And there was another group of guys who played Dungeons and Dragons at the company, and they didn't know each other. And then they came together and played Dungeons and Dragons together. I mean, that's so great because it's so nerdy and niche and passionate. And it's like, I would have never suggested that, but of course it makes a lot of sense. And so what you have to do is try a lot of things, look for what people want. One of our clients, PagerDuty, which went public a few years ago, they have such a wonderful program around their employee resource groups. They have the vets group, they have the queer group, they have the Black Pride group. Like, there's a lot of different groups, and those are also awesome ways to connect with other humans outside of the project team that you're on. So that's another example. Now, that's a lot more, you're going to talk about a lot more serious things than #cats.
Yeah.
But that point is the same.
No, it's like a substrate for creating that. The other thing that I've noticed is there tends to be at companies these invisible patterns that can form about who feels safe to introduce the topics. And leadership often feels safe, but then there's this weird dynamic of like, okay, Roy wants to talk about chess, but nobody else wants to talk about chess. But are we going to humor him because he runs the team, or are we going to actually do it? And one of the things that I've found is, at the same time, it's like somebody joins their first day, while you might welcome their perspective. And by the way, you might especially welcome their perspective if they come from an underrepresented background. Then they may feel unsafe because they just don't feel like they get it yet, or comfortable, it might say the wrong thing. And so finding a range of different people who are in that just right place of like, they're not in the leadership of the organization, but they are in a place where they might feel comfortable enough and represent alternative points of view. It's like, for all I know, like the topic people might want to talk about is, I don't know, I'm making this up, like some sport I don't even think about at all. Like, I don't know, like women's soccer or something like that. We had a women's soccer person on here, good friend. But distributing who can make the choices about those kind of topics, I think can sometimes work as well.
Well, I mean, what you do is you do low risk prototypes, which is like the first and easy thing we've already talked about, which is I'm just going to start a public Slack group about curling. Who the hell cares if you've got one person that shows up, it's a win.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
So I want to actually call out what you just said, which is excellent, which is the job of the company, which means the job of the leaders and the job of the managers, is to provide opportunities, encouragement to people to say, this is what we want you to do. We want you to try and fail. It's just like everything else, the prototype of, we want you to find and express yourself. As a matter of fact, we're going to support you in that. One example that I talk about in the book is that when I was working with Credit Karma, one of their executives had to leave a meeting early because he had band practice. And I was like, what do you mean you have band practice? He's like, well, we have our instruments in the closet in the other building. And then we go once a week, we go play. Now I know that's in person, but the point being is like, the company is like, bring in your stuff. We're not funding this, but we're going to let you have a little closet and we're going to encourage you, give you some time.
Yeah.
So it's like, just get out of the way. And that to me is what you want. You want to point those things out. This is great. Totally acceptable. We want you to make these connections.
Yeah, I love that. And, there's a link there for folks who want the book. I love that because I think a thing that can frequently happen at work is people show up with different and invisible assumptions about what is and isn't acceptable at work. And especially if you have a diverse workplace, then people bring very different assumptions about what is and isn't acceptable. And by the way, having a closet where, the band can practice may not be appropriate in every workplace, right? In like a super uptight, highly regulated environment that's entirely focused on not fucking up, if a client comes in and here's the band practicing, it may be destructive to the business, or the founder or the CEO's personality may just be that they're a jerk and don't want people to have fun or something like that. And so I love that because you as a leader or a member of a team can either state or ask what the appropriate expectations are. Anything else you want to make sure to share on this before we wrap?
Yeah, well, one of the key ideas that I've discovered in my time doing research and thinking a lot about culture is that relationships are the synapses of culture.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? You said
that. Yeah, so culture is shared. Culture is the cause and effect of every decision that we make. And by being in relation with other people, they learn what is, like you said, what is and is not acceptable, what is and is not the expected, examples of success, how you make your choices. So if you do not have those relationships, both the close and the far, then you're going to get those little silos, which end up being the problem of, that we've always tried to.
So the relationship helps the whole network of the brain to communicate more effectively so that, that makes a ton of sense to me. I appreciate that and knowing that perspective. And I'll just say, for folks who want to check out the book, Great Mondays. And we will be we've already been recording. We will be transcribing and placing this Q&A at our website, which has all of the past questions, which is thisisnotadvice.org. And folks can take a look if they want to find that repository. And Josh, just love the humanity and the practicality in what you're describing. And so thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Roy. It was really good.